My name is Sarah Vanderwall, and today we're going to be going over the muscular system and different disorders and diseases that can impact our muscular system. And I do apologize, I'm going to have to switch from being up by the screen to being up by my computer to click from different slideshows because I don't have anybody to switch for me. So, bear with me. So to start, our muscular system essentially helps with our movements. It helps with being able to complete our everyday functions. Things like waving our arms, things like breathing, things like digesting our foods, things that we might not think about on a daily basis. For example, breathing. We don't think about our breathing when we're doing it, we just do it. And that's because of our muscles. Our muscles are composed of different elastic and fibrils. We have 3 different kinds of muscles, and our muscles connect to our body via our bones, and they're connected via ligaments. The 3 different types of there's 3 different types of muscles that I mentioned earlier are skeletal, cardiac, and smooth. And as you can see here, skeletal muscle is attached to the bone, and it's the only form of voluntary muscle that we have. This means that we choose to move it. It doesn't just do it on its own. Cardiac muscle is found only in the heart. As you can imagine, cardiac, heart, it's only found in the heart. It's involuntary, meaning that we don't have to think about it. It just moves on its own, and it does whatever it's going to do without us having to think about it or without us having to tell it to do it. Lastly is our smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is lining most of our basic organs, and it protects it and it cushions it. It's also involuntary, again, meaning that we don't have to think about its function. We don't have to tell our brain or think in our brain to tell it what to do. It just does it on its own, which is pretty cool. So the basic structure of the muscular system, as explained by BD editors, is a muscle consists of many muscle tissues bundled together and surrounded by epimysium, a tough connective tissue similar to cartilage. The epimysium surrounds bundles of nerve cells that run in long fibers called fascicles. These fascicles are surrounded by their own protective layer called the perimysium. This layer allows nerves and blood to flow to the individual fibers. Each fiber is then wrapped in an endomysium, another protective layer. And that's my quote right there. So if you have any questions on where that source was from, it's also at the end of my PowerPoint. I listed my source so you can see the quote directly for yourself. And this next slideshow is just a picture of the structure. This is specifically a skeletal muscle, but it shows you kind of what each of those things that the quote was talking about. So for example, the epimysium, it's a hard word for me to say, I apologize, is right here, and that's, like I said, that outer protective layer. And then this is the bone. So like I said, mentioned earlier, this is the tendon where the bone would attach to, and I know it's really hard to see because my TV is really bright, so I'm gonna attach a copy of my PowerPoint below my video, so that way you guys can look for yourself and see for yourself, because I know it's kind of working against me with the brightness of my TV. So I won't go into too much detail on this picture because I know it's really hard to see, so I'll just make sure that I post a copy of my PowerPoint for you guys to see yourself and go into details for yourself. So as far as function relation for our muscular system and what it really means, for our muscles to work, we really kind of have to think about the movement, whether we realize that we're thinking about it or not, because I know that I said we have involuntary muscles and voluntary muscles, but we don't necessarily think about the movement or know that we're thinking about the movement. But then once we've kind of thought about that movement and understood that that movement is going to be made, an electrical impulse is then sent from our brain down our spinal cord, and it's sent through our nerves as well, and it's delivered to the corresponding muscle, whichever muscle is supposed to react, whichever muscle is supposed to carry out the action. And then If there's enough neurotransmitters present at that muscle, the action will be carried out. If there's not enough neurotransmitters at that action, then they'll need more neurotransmitters before that action can be carried out. So for the disorder that I decided to discuss for this presentation was amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It's also referred to as ALS, and sometimes it's referred to as Lou Gehrig's disease, named after a famous baseball player who had it. But in my PowerPoint, I'm just going to refer to it as ALS. So what it is it's actually both a muscle system or muscle disorder and nervous system disorder, because it affects both. Technically, it affects the nervous system, but because of the nervous system effects that it has, it destroys the muscular system. So what it does is it causes the nerve cells to slowly begin to die, and once the nerve cells die, they stop sending any signals to the muscles. So once the muscles aren't getting those signals from the nerve cells, they start to die as well. And once they start to die and they stop getting those signals and stop being told what to do, essentially, they just don't work anymore. They don't function anymore. So for the diagnostics of this disease, there really isn't a whole lot of diagnostics for this disease, especially in the earlier stages of the disease, simply because ALS can look a lot like a lot of other disorders in the earlier stages, just because it's mostly small muscle loss in the beginning, and it doesn't have any signifying standout symptoms. So a lot of the tests that they do, a lot of the diagnostic testing that they do for ALS is simply to rule out other disorders so that they know, okay, it's not this, so potentially it could be ALS. And some of those tests can show, okay, yeah, we think it could be ALS. So it's kind of more so ruling other things out and pointing them in the direction of ALS. So it's really complicated with the diagnostics. Some of the tests actually include an EMG, which is a muscle test. It shows how your muscles are functioning, how they're working, how well they're working. Another one is a nerve conduction study, which is also, again, working and testing to see how well your nerves are working. Another one is an MRI, and that's to look inside of your head, inside of your muscles, just seeing how well those are doing. Blood and urine tests, a spinal tap to look at your spinal fluid, as well as a muscle biopsy, and that's where they would go in and take out a part of your muscle to see if it's still receiving different kind of signals, seeing the healthy or like the health of your muscle. Unfortunately, there is currently no cure for ALS. There's medications out there that can help treat the symptoms of ALS and that can help manage the symptoms, but there's not a cure that will completely cure it. There's also medications out there that can help with extending your life, but they've only been proven to extend your life expectancy for 3 to 6 months. So it's not a lot of an extension on your life period, so it's really sad, and it's really hard for those that have it. The long-term implications of this disease on the anatomy is that it slowly just progresses to kill most or all of the nerves in your body. So it eventually causes most, if not all, of the muscles in your body to again stop working and stop functioning properly. So you don't have that function. You slowly begin to lose the function to swallow. You slowly begin to lose that function to digest your food, to have bowel movements frequently or normally, to have your urination habits normally. A lot of people lose their ability to breathe normally, to have normal respirations, and unfortunately that's what leads to a lot of the passing from ALS, is that a lot of people, they lose control of their respiration muscles, and it causes them to unfortunately just stop breathing, essentially, because their muscles just aren't strong enough to continue, and it's really hard and it's really sad. So it's not something that is good to see, not something that you would want for anybody to go through, any loved one, any person to go through, which is another reason why I wanted to do my presentation on this, just because I've seen it and I know how hard it can be. So I guess I kind of wanted to bring light to it in a way. But lastly,